after calls by oil marketers for the price of petrol to be reviewed upwards. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, has finally yielded to their request, as the pump price of premium motor spirit, PMS, has been hiked from 165 naira per litre to 179 naira per litre. This is coming after the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, and Natural Oil and Gas Suppliers Association, NOGASA, had earlier pushed for the upward review of petrol price, as some members of IPMAN had already effected this by selling above the 165 naira per litre government-approved price. Joining us as we discuss the increase in the price of petrol are the trio of Agnes Sesi, Chairman of Nigerian Labour Congress, Lagos State, Dr. Godswill Ihetu, former Group Executive Director, Engineering and Technology at the NNPC, and Mike Osatuyi, National Operations Controller of the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN. Welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us on the morning show. Well, let me start with you, Mr. Michael Osatuyi. Well, yesterday, the NNPC unveiled itself as a new brand, a new logo, a new company. What are the implications? And the quick implication of that Nigerians saw was the fact that the pump price of fuel at NNPC stations went up to 179 naira per litre. In real terms, what does the transformation, some people say transition, of the NNPC, what does it mean? And are we going to pay a price in terms of a free market, indication in terms of what we pay at the filling stations?
Yeah, thank you, Nigerian. Good morning. The NNPC Limited has become a company, limited by shares, and that implies that it's a new beginning. And they are now going to be responsible to the shareholders. And they have their board. So it implies that the president or whoever is the head of the country cannot just wake up in the morning and remove the MD or the board. So it's going to be accountable to the shareholders, and that's a good beginning. And they're going to get their account audited, published, and also comply with the CAMA. So they cannot, in fact, there's no more shortcuts. So they're going to accountable to the shareholders like other companies, Mobile or these winners or big companies. So it's a good beginning for the country and for the oil sector, this country. Then coming back to the issue of increase in pump price. You see, I've said it before that market fundamentals has come to play, and there's no way we can run away from it. It's a transition, it's a beginning of deregulation, which will still come eventually. But as of now, government has not deregulated, but they are trying to ensure that at least there's a small cost recovery in terms of logistics, in terms of the transport cost. If that is the beginning, and we just wake up and saw that it has become 179, and it even varies from state to state, from zone to zone. So it's a new beginning, and I think I'm always, if I were to thank the government that they're even trying to cushion the effect because by absorbing the subsidy, because it's not easy.
Right, thank you. I'd like your response, Mrs. Sesi, to that fuel price increase from 165 naira to 179. And as Mr. Osatuyi said, the variance across the country, some parts of Nigeria are paying 184 naira, for example, whereas the defunct PPPRA where you need it. But what's your response to that?
Thank you very much. Early this year in January, we were all in the country when Labour tried to come out to ensure that the planned increase in the price of the pump price was not possible. when government was trying to propose the price of the pump price to about 340 naira to 400 naira. Labour tried to stop the government then. And without our intervention, the government have to, retrace their steps back. And then they stopped the plan increase. It's part of, the strategy of deceit that this present government, they always deploy at every point in time. Their government has never always been sincere with the workers. And this is what informed the reason why they now, increase the pump price secretly now without consulting the stakeholders, without consulting Nigerians, without consulting those who are representing the interest of Nigeria, without the government putting into consideration the escalation of everything in this country, without thinking about Nigerians in difficulties, without thinking about the free fall of Naira every day, without thinking about the scenario of not increasing the price, not increasing the wages of Nigerians, of workers. And yet, every day what we see is inflation, rise in the prices of everything. And the cost of fuel continues to make everything to increase, even to the pepper, to the tomatoes that we use to make our pot of soup. It's high time for us Nigerians not to think the fight is only for Nigeria Labour Congress. Every Nigerian should be able to come out to condemn the activities of this government. For often time, we've been saying it, that this present government is bereft of the idea on how to run this government. Instead of them to alleviate the sufferings of the poor masses of Nigerians, we continue to increase the pains of the country. For God's sake, Nigeria is an oil-producing country. We should not be lacking in what God has deposited for us free of charge. If the government has taken to the advice of Labour for long, we have 4 refineries. We have the crude. Why are we taking it outside the shores of this country to refine our crude and then bringing it back exorbitantly on pound sterling? And this has affected virtually everything in the country. And these are the people that dictate the economy of this country, because we leave the running of the country into the hand of foreigners.
Mrs. Sessi, can I just ask
And it is high time this government begin to think about the ripple effect of their indiscretion.
Right.
And they should begin to think about how the cost of, escalating cost of everything has its own negative effect on the life of poor masses.
Right. Can I just ask?
Many Nigerians have been pushed into depression. Many Nigerians have been put into frustration.
Can you hear me, Mrs. Sessi?
Frustration mood or code is high.
Can you hear me, Mrs. Sessi?
And it will get to a level when you are.
Can you hear me, Mrs. Sessi? I'm trying to ask you a question. It doesn't appear that she can hear me.
But when it gets to a position where it feels that it needs to defend itself, we face the person that is pursuing it. So this is the high time. The government is supposed to be very sensitive to the plight of Nigerians, that many people have been pushed into poverty, more poverty.
Can you hear me, Mrs. Sessi?
Even to the extent that they have secretly also increased the prices of the electricity, energy.
Can you hear me at all, Mrs. Sessi?
Nigerians should begin to think.
Can you hear me at all, Mrs. Sessi?
That we need to mobilize ourselves against the indiscretion of the government.
I'm not sure if you can hear me. I'm trying to find out where you are and what's happening where you are. Doesn't appear that she can hear me. Maybe
where we are now, yes, where we are right now, we are on the street. We are right here at the MTN headquarters at Falomo under the bridge. We are picketing MTN head office. And we are showing our displeasure against the mismanagement of MTN, against the workers. You know, the welfare, this is part of what we are also talking about. MTN is about the third company in Nigeria that is making gains and a hell of a money, and yet, the welfare of the workers is not being considered. Many of their workers are still casual workers after 10 years of engagement, 15 years of engagement, and it means that by the time they will, you know, have to disengage themselves from the work, they have nothing, because they are being regarded as casual workers. And even at that, their welfare is not also well taken care of. So this is a country where lawlessness is the order of the day, where people feel that they can come and make business in Nigeria. They are also reaping us. And not only about the welfare of their workforce, there is freedom of association. The Nigerian law stipulates that when you have more than 20 workers and they are ready to willfully to associate and form a union, you should allow them. MTN has been a blockade for the workers that want to, you know, organize themselves into a union so that they can form a bloc where they can negotiate and talk about their own welfare. So this management has been suppressing and oppressing Nigerian workers. So, and this is why we said we are going to put a no to it today.
Oh, okay.
It's not only about that. Nigerians are being ripped of their hard-earned money as well.
Okay.
You know, this DSTV payment.
Okay.
We said it should be pay as you go. But MTN is not doing pay as you go.
Okay.
When you pay your money, when you buy your DSTV, by the time you are not even around to sit down and enjoy it, your money will be counting. Even while you are not even watching.
Thank you so much for your insight. We'd like to bring in Doc. Can you hear me? We'll hold on you. I will go to Dr. Godswill Ihetu, former Executive Director Engineering and Executive Engineering. We'd like to ask you, Dr. Godswill Ihetu, what's your read on this new NNPC company, and what will be the effects on the prospect of Nigerians in general?
Thank you very much. My name is Godswill Ihetu. Yes, I think yesterday's landmark event is long overdue. We are looking at an NNPC that is independent. I use that word advisedly. The hope is that we now have a purely commercial entity that is not a corporation set up just to serve the interests of government, but a purely business entity.
Okay. Is that your take on it? Okay. Real quickly.
Yes, that is my take on it, because we have been working on this for close to 30 years. I remember the commercialization and reorganization, capitalization of NNPC started in the time of Harriet Adams in the late 80s. And I think this is just the end point of that effort.
So what do you think it would do for Nigerians?
This is what has been dreamt of for so long.
What do you think it will do for Nigerians?
Well, first of all, I think by way of making profits, because that's what a commercial entity is supposed to do, we hope it to be more efficient and therefore be able to make profits and pay dividends to shareholders who are the Nigerian people. And actually, not only work in Nigeria, but also able to offer services or play in the international arena. The end of the day is that we have a company that can deliver profits, dividends. I think that's the end game. And if the company prospers, then there should be, spin-offs, things like corporate social responsibility projects that would affect the entire country.
Okay. Dr. Ihetu.
Again, one would look at Nigeria LNG the way it is. And we hope that the NNPC Limited will be as independent as NLNG, being able to make profit, deliver dividends to shareholders, and at the same time help in impacting institutions within Nigeria.
Okay, Dr. Ihetu, it's good you made the point that under Mr. Arrett Adams, an attempt had been made previously before now at commercialization. But that was without, the framework of what we now have, which is the Petroleum Industry Act. Now, many Nigerians have been saying commercialization cannot go far enough. They're saying what is required is privatization, especially as what we have now is a political board represented by, persons from government. Now, what we need is a commercial board that is governed properly by the rules of the Companies and Allied Matters Act. And so, in that regard, people are saying not commercialization, but privatization. What do you say to that?
Well, privatization has many degrees. If you're saying sell the company entirely to the private sector 100%, that would be a very severe way to approach it. If you say partial privatization, by which you mean government still holds interest, possibly minority interest, then that again looks like a good arrangement, in which case government interference is completely removed. Example again, NLNG, government owns 49%, private sector, oil companies 51%, and the board is independent, and they do their business in the way they understand and in the way that they're able to expand and make profits.
Right, thank you, sir. Mr. Osatuyi, I'm sure by now you've heard about all the skepticism that's been expressed about NNPC's new look, shall we call it, in terms of the probability or possibility of continued government interference, recruitment practices that might be less than ideal, and what have you. What are your hopes precisely for this new venture? And what do you need to see to give you comfort and faith in where we're heading with this new venture?
Yeah, thank you. Let me first of all talk about the board that Dr. Batu said is a government-constituted board. There has to be a transition from somewhere to somewhere. Now that the board is in place, by the time the company now go into full force, then all the law of karma will be applied. And as the article has said about the gas company NNG, it's a good success. So we have Shell as a shareholder, we have Nigeria for 9%, we have NE, and they have been paying dividend to the federal government for years, and there's no any government interference. And I believe it's going to be a replica. This new NNPC Limited will be a replica of what we have in that system. So there's a big hope, and there's going to be a kind of corporate governance. They're going to be account be audited. They pay their tax to the government, and they are going to abide by the law. But principally is that there will be no any government interference in the management, recruitment, appointment of the staff and everything. So we should have confidence in this new system, and then we have to commend even the government for them to agree to hands off the company to private, to be a private driving system. I think we need to commend them because it's like if they're losing power, but they have to use the power to make the country move forward, to make the business be a real business. So I think we need to commend them for that, because practically when you have power to appoint the board, to appoint this or sack and recruit, and you decide to defeat, let it go. I think we need to commend them, and I'm hopeful that we're going to see new NNPC limited, and they're going to give a result. And in fact, if you go around the country now, the retail aspect of NNPC is being rebranded with a new logo, new paint and everything. So, and that shows that they are serious to do business.
So I'd like to ask then, is it that it's good news for IPMAN with all of this happening? Is it also good news for IPMAN with the price recently increased? Because IPMAN had always, pushed, and part of other organizations have pushed for the increase in price until we finally had the increase in price. In fact, some of your members started selling at that price. So is it that it is good news for both of you and more hardship for Nigerians? And after you share your thoughts in this, I would also like to come to Agnes Sessi and say to you that, okay, she's not there any longer? Okay. So I'd also like to come to you, Dr. Godswill Ihetu, with this question, maybe after he's done, by asking you that there are a lot of bottlenecks already. In fact, the Governors Forum might be going to court at some point to understand the constitutionality of this. Because when you say the new board of the new shareholders will be the Ministry of Finance and, Ministry of Petroleum Resource and Nigerian Treasury, who represents the federating units, the states in all of this? So what becomes of their lot? Because what they keep saying, the NNPC keeps saying, is that the shareholders are 200 million Nigerians. But hey, I am not represented there. I have a state. States don't sit there. It's only the ministries and the treasury. I'll start with you first, and I will come to you afterwards.
Yeah, thank you. For we in IPMAN, we are happy that we are going to be dealing with a company now that is limited, that is from government, because we are now going to do business with a company that doesn't have any government interference. But before, we have bottlenecks with the old NNPC in terms of product sourcing. But when it is being driven by private sector, then you pay your money, you take your products, you sell and make a reasonable profit. But about the recent increase, what we had yesterday, is a cost recovery. It's part of recovery of cost that we have been complaining. That diesel has gone up, that even to run stations is expensive, to fire a generator is expensive. So there's no any sharing news about it, but cost recovery, and it's a gradual thing. It's not that they have already done what we want, but at least we have to start from somewhere. So what they have done is just a cost recovery. Not that we are going to make any super profit, no. But this is for them to have even done that. Yes, for Nigerians, I sympathize with Nigerians because they are going to incur more costs, and the system that has failed before. In fact, we have to tell ourselves the truth. We have inflation that is eating deep into the pocket of everybody every day. I think it's 18.6% now. So it's not that we are going to make big profit.
Why are your prices different across regions?
It has to be different because you can't compare the cost of transportation from here to Ogun State and compare and with the one to Ondo State or Borno or something. So, but there's going to be a marginal difference. If you see diesel cost, it's not the same everywhere, but there's going to be a marginal difference. But let me say something: you cannot exploit. Because if you put in too much price into your pump, you won't get customer. In fact, your neighbor, if you're selling 190 and you're selling 100, 200, nobody will come to you. So we are going to competition, and which is good. Good for business because the customers will have value for their money. There'll be no cheating, and there'll be fairness, and it's going to be a good corporate operation.
Okay, Dr. Godswill here to the questions I asked earlier on.
Yes. Well, talking about the deregulation of petrol prices as a result of the implementation of the PIA Act now, independence of NNPC. What it means, therefore, is that, as the IPMAN gentleman has said, there is a bit of competition. They are able to go as groups, import petroleum products directly without necessarily waiting for NNPC to do so. And because they have to, what it now means that we don't have controlled price or uniform pricing nationwide. It now means that if you take your product in Lagos and you want to deliver to Maiduguri, then you must put in the bridging cost on the price of your product in Maiduguri. And that is why the gentleman is talking about you cannot have the same price everywhere, in every city. That's what this deregulation is going to achieve. And in the case of NNPC, NNPC will be just like any other petrol selling company. It will import for itself, and if there are some shortfalls in the national supply, they'll be able to support the independent marketers that are selling petrol in the country. Well, subsidy has been a very contentious and complex issue. And yes, the Governors Forum has cried out a number of times because what the NNPC was giving after recovering costs was not commensurate with their expectations. But then the issue is that the price of crude oil and the exchange rate, the deterioration of the exchange rate dollar to naira has pushed up prices for petrol imported into this country. And therefore, if the uniform price is to be kept, subsidy increases, and that subsidy is being taken out of the Federation account funds. So the governors are getting less funds that they expect. Then the other issue about composition of the board of directors. Since NNPC and the government, if you like, are the ones constituting the board on behalf of Minister of Finance and Minister of Petroleum. What you would expect is that since it is a limited liability company, shareholders, the entire Nigerian people, there should be some input from the Governors Forum in terms of board composition. I think that would be a fair way to look at it, rather than leaving the entire process to the federal government. Because, I mean, the states are also partakers in this enterprise.
Okay. Now, two questions for both of you. The NNPC is now saying that it has no involvement in donating or, making returns to the Federal Allocation Accounts Committee. Is that the right thing to say, considering the fact that the major shareholders remain the Ministry of Finance Incorporated and the Nigerian Treasury, representing the Nigerian people? Second, NNPC says that now as a commercial entity, it has no issue whatsoever anymore with pricing or subsidy, that is the responsibility of the state. Can the NNPC effectively, not being a privatized company, still a commercial entity, it says it's independent of institutional control, but at the same time, it's still basically, within the environmental government. Can you help us clarify these two major issues that may be of concern to Nigerians. Let me come back to you, Dr. Ihetu, and then after that, Mr. Osatuyi here in the studio can address the same issues.
Well, the way I see it, NNPC would be like any other company selling petroleum products in Nigeria, whether it is Total, MRS. They will import products for their own stations. The independent marketers will be free to import products for their own stations. And they have to worry about the landing costs. If they are to make a profit, they have to add a margin to whatever is the international price or the landing cost here. Whether that will be controlled by the government is another question. But we are beginning to see a little bit of increase, and government is saying we're not involved in pricing this product. The ultimate aim is for the independent marketers or the other oil companies to be able to import their products, depending if they can find the product cheaper than NNPC has been delivering at, then they will determine what price they want to sell. And if they're able to compete with them among themselves, we would see that maybe eventually the price of petroleum products will begin to go down if after an initial increase. But of course, they don't have any control over crude oil prices. They don't have any control over exchange rates, and those two impact the landing cost here. But the way I understand it now is that NNPC will import for itself and then act as importer of last resort, just in case there are shortfalls in supplies from the independent marketing or the petroleum marketing companies, the non-government petroleum companies.
Well, clearly, Mr. Osatuyi, this is not an academic issue. We should not make it academic. Now, all this talk about independence and all of that, we're not involved in subsidy and all of that. It's government that will fix prices. It's government that will do this and all that. Some Nigerians are saying that no, there's nothing new about NNPC. I saw some of those reactions online. They are saying that this is old wine in a new bottle. So what do you think is responsible for this skepticism? And what do you think you have seen as an industry player that does not justify this skepticism?
Yeah, thank you. There's no need to fear. The federal government, they have already pronounced yesterday that this is limited liability company limited by shares. So you say you're asking if they are going to remit into federation account. You cannot eat from both hands. If it's a company limited by shares, then the government will have their dividend by the end of the year. So and that stands like the gas something that we were talking about before. They pay billions of dollars to government every year. So and that's going to be the same system that are going to operate. So there's no deceit in what has been done yesterday. They are serious about it, but we need to give them time for transition. In fact, you don't born a baby in a day. Then you expect to work. So we have to give the company time to get themselves together, to do some restructuring and other things, and internal cleansing. But I hope and I believe that we are going to get good results from there. And we in IPMAN, we like to deal. We are better off if we are buying from a company than a government regulated agency that has all the powers to do and undo. And you know, I mean, we have been saying that when you are in any government system, the kind of efficiency is not there. But for a company, it's either you are there in or you are out. If you fail to do your job, you are fired. Because by the end of the year, you can't be expecting telling shareholder stories. Right? Like what we have in the abandoned refineries, if it's a private company, you can't do that. It must have, the company must have find solution to those abandoned refineries. So we expect, and I believe that we are going to get the best of a result from this newborn baby.
I love your optimism, and I just want to go back to Dr. Ihetu and talk about the moribund refineries in this world where we've seen the effects of the Russian war on Ukraine and how that has affected the whole world and caused this energy crisis. We're really in such a precarious situation when we continue to import. Recently, Mele Kyari, NNPC's group managing director, said that there will be no quick fix with regards to the refineries, but that action would be taken with worry at least. Can you give us some kind of idea of what a roadmap could look like and when we could optimally see those 4 refineries up and running?
Well, first of all, let me agree with my IPMAN contributor. He talked about giving NNPC some time during this transition to be able to sort out these issues of subsidy, who has responsibility for what. I think that transition period has to happen for things to be clearer. Now, coming to your question about refineries. Well, we have seen that NNPC has started rehabilitating the Port Harcourt refinery. And I think they're also making plans to rehabilitate the Warri refinery. That is the only way to go, really. I mean, if you have an asset and you're a private company, you want to make sure you maximize the use of your asset. What this NNPC Limited does now is that it is not the federal government that decides how much money to give them for turnaround maintenance. They will have to look for the money and fix the refineries because they'll be losing revenue if those refineries are not operational. Well, this takes me to something else, something that we outside the industry, some of us outside the industry do not fully appreciate. We're in a precarious situation today with pipeline vandalization, crude oil theft. Even when the refinery in Port Harcourt is fixed, and we don't have crude oil coming from Bonny or sufficient crude oil coming from Bonny, we're still in a fix. So something needs to be done about crude oil theft. Figures have been bandied about how much is being stolen. Quite a substantial amount of crude oil is being stolen. And it is important that the government does all it should to be able to stop this process. Well, not only government, the oil companies as well, because what is happening is a serious matter. We're talking about revenues to the federal government. If we don't export enough oil, we don't get the revenues. We have an OPEC quota of about 1.8 million barrels per day, and we're exporting about 1.3 or less. So that is a very important aspect that NNPC, the oil companies, the federal government need to get together and resolve this crude theft issue.
Okay. Real quickly, I'd like to go back to that issue of crude oil theft that has really disrupted the oil industry in this country. Do you think there will be some level of transparency now with the NNPC as regards how much is even consumed daily? Because a lot of people complain that is very nebulous and they talk about the fact that there's no transparency as regards that. Do you also think there will be some level of transparency as regards the turnaround maintenance going on at the refinery? Because we heard a couple of months back, or years back, I should say now, 1 or 2 years back, about how this process has started, but we have no updates. We have nothing as regards when this is going to come on stream. What is also going to happen to the JVs, various JVs, joint partnerships we have? What is also going to happen to the other refineries that NNPC have shares in? And we all know the refineries that NNPC are invested in. And I'll come to you, sir, by asking you that, will this stop IPMAN members from driving tankers across the border to steal our own precious petrol here to go and sell in Benin Republic for high amounts, or Niger for high amounts? Will this stop them from doing all of that? Those are the two questions I have for you. Dr. Ihetu, you start first, and afterwards I'll come to Osatuyi here.
Well, you are asking about transparency. When it comes to turnaround maintenance now, it is the business of NNPC Limited. The government is not going to budget anything, and give them maybe 50% of what they need. They will now have to find the funds and commit and make sure that the turnaround maintenance is concluded the way according to industry best practices. Not like previously, when they will ask for 100 million and they will get 50 million or something like that. And those processes have dragged on for several years because they have not been properly funded. It's not because of lack of expertise on the part of the managers and operators in those refineries. It has been a problem of funding and government. I like to use the word interference to some extent. Now, about the issue of transparency in, shall I say now, you were asking the IPMAN gentleman
no, even
about
transparency with NNPC,
the consequence of this.
How much do we even...
Sorry?
No, I was asking you, sir, transparency in NNPC, how
Yes,
much do we even consume per day
the issue
in products?
of how much we consume, yes. Well, we have seen a number of figures produced by NNPC. But I have sympathy for NNPC here because there's no way they would know. So long as there is subsidy, we are feeding Benin Republic, even up to, if not up to Togo and Ghana, we are feeding Cameroon. So long as this differential is there, I think the issue of smuggling will continue to happen. You can't police these borders, well enough. Let me just give you a perspective of this. If we are selling petrol here at 170 per liter, for example, and the international price is 300 per liter, and that's probably what they're paying in, if not more, in Cameroon and Benin Republic. The differential in price, if somebody loads a 30,000 liter tanker in Lagos at 170 per liter, crosses into Cameroon and sells at 300 per liter, you have a differential of 4 million naira on one truck. That guy can afford to, bribe anybody at that border and still make a very handsome profit. So it's a good business for, those who are able to feed our neighboring countries. So the issue of how much we consume can be a challenge for NNPC or for anybody, for that matter, who is taking statistics of consumption. Unless, of course, you are able to just pick up information from every filling station around the country, which can be a tall order.
All right, Mr. Osatuyi?
Now you
okay, go ahead.
JVs.
Yeah.
On the JVs, you were trying to understand what will happen.
Yes.
I think it will be business as usual, but now NNPC should be able to control the JVs better. NNPC should be able now to hire experts, even from anywhere, if they need support, rather than the previous arrangement where, well, they will be hamstrung if they said they needed Mr. A from Canada or Mr. B from the UK. But now I think there's a lot of flexibility that they should be able to supervise their participation in the JVs much better than before.
Then the other refineries that NNPC invested in, what happens to that?
The other that I know about the Dangote one, well, we hear that Dangote will start selling about first half of next year. And again, the price of that product will not be subsidized. It will be international price because Dangote is probably buying crude oil. I assume they are buying international price, and they will factor their own production costs. And I don't see that the price here will be different. So NNPC will, yes, expect to reap dividends beginning next year or subsequent years from their 20%, I understand, 20% participation in the Dangote refinery. I don't know that NNPC is involved in any other refinery, apart from the little modular refineries where the Nigerian Content Board invests just a token. Those are minor, very minor interests.
Okay. How about you, sir? Mr. Osatuyi?
Yeah, Doctor has even answered the question, but I will just try to embellish more. You know, it is tempting for somebody to buy a product in Nigeria at 5 million and just go across and sell at 50 million. It's very tempting. And he has answered everything all. That even if you do some bribery or something, you still have a good profit. But when they deregulate, all these things we stop. And I'm not saying that some of our bad egg in IPMAN doesn't do it. I can't vouch for everybody. But at the same time, we have set up a new task force that to help the government also, backed by the government, to help the government to control this smuggling. And I'm using this medium to appeal to our members not to engage in anything smuggling because anybody that is caught is on his own. But at the same time, the country is bleeding with this smuggling. And I must tell you that to even get the accurate consumption of the country is difficult because we are the one feeding the neighboring countries, as the doctor has said. And for us to now say it's 80 million or 90 million or 70, until we deregulate, that is when we can be able to have what we consume. Like, it's very easy for us to know what we consume in diesel or kerosene because it is not subsidized. There's no smuggling of diesel or kerosene. You can also know the figures through the importation record from government agencies. So, and as much as we still subsidize petrol, smuggling will continue. And there's no way we can get the accurate consumption of the country. And I believe very soon, as they have said, that some months away, they are going to deregulate, which is going to be a very, very painful decision for the government, but there's nothing they can do because the amount we are going to be paying for subsidy will reach about 8 trillion eventually, and which we cannot afford. And it's bleeding to the national treasury. And if you are doing it 8 trillion subsidy and you are servicing them 5 trillion, you are paying wages 5, that's about 17, 18 trillion. So in which we are getting 10 trillion. So it means we are borrowing 8 trillion every year, subsidy year, to finance the budget. So where is the money?
Okay, gentlemen, the operative word here is transition. NNPC transiting to a new dispensation. Nigeria itself is in a moment of a transition. You see a clash here. I mean, we've been in this country where one administration to another, we've seen policy somersault. By next year, there will be another government in place, which may not be as committed to the Petroleum Industry Act and some of its details. Do you see a future government coming around and tampering with this new dispensation that has been unveiled? After all, it happened before in the electricity sector. It happened before also in the downstream sector. Let me start with you, Dr. Ihetu, and then Mr. Osatuyi, whether you have any fears in that regard. Dr. Ihetu first.
Yeah, I don't have any fears because, yes, the Petroleum Act is an act which can be, if you like, reviewed by future National Assembly and maybe endorsed by future president. But I think the government has beaten the bullet in this case. I don't see any reversal in NNPC Limited, which is the key beneficiary, if you like, of the PIA. I don't see any changes there. Yes, there are other things in the PIA that may be a little bit contentious, and the future government can review it, look at it. But whatever it is, it has to be something that benefits the populace. But as far as NNPC Limited is concerned, no government will come, ignore what Aramco is doing, ignore what Petronas is doing, ignore what Petrobras is doing in Brazil, and then start tweaking NNPC Limited. I think this is a major step, and it will be difficult to reverse.
Yes, Mr. Osatuyi.
Yes, thank you. You know, the PIA Act was signed on 16th August 2021, and it is being implemented by this government. And we have to also thank the government for being bold enough to even put the act in place, because it has been about 20 years that this act has been moribund. Our government has been dodging the act, and because of politics and both external and internal interest has made it to fail by the previous government. So we have to thank the government of Buhari for even taking the bull by the horn to sign this act. And we have seen that they have started to implement it. So, no government can come again and cancel it. It has to pass through again assembly. They can review, they can amend, they can add, they can surprise, but it has to go through the process of assembly to amend that act again. But neverthelessly, they cannot cancel it because it is very difficult. And no assembly can come and say, it's a newer government, then I will cancel the act. No, it's not possible, because this is a government in place that is put in by the people, and they have the mandate of Nigerians to act what they are doing now. And yesterday, they have separated A from B, and a new company has come to place, which is not answerable to the government, but to the shareholders. So we see a new company, new ideas, new information, new corporate governance, and new results. If all these apparently are being owned by a company, by individuals, it won't be like that. Right? But I believe that with what we have seen now, there's going to be changes, because this company, they have the power now to borrow money, to take decisions without referring to the government, or to go through all these bureaucratic tendencies, or all these TSC or whatever. So they can take decisions, business decisions, and they can invest in other countries also to make money. If you go to Saudi Arabia, Aramco is there, they're doing fine. And that is the replica of what we are trying to put in place in Nigeria, which has come to stay. Through the PIA, we're going to see so many reforms, both in the upstream, both in the downstream. And then you will see that the issue of crude oil theft with this new company and new administration, new institution, they are going to bring in a kind of a private sector security network that will checkmate all this nonsense. Because before it's government. That's why there's politics, there's no commitment, there's no faithfulness. But now that it's a private driving system, which has worked in this country, we have a big company that is making profit. If Nigeria is a company owned by individual, it will work. But now it is going to work now.
Well, I like your optimism, but we'll see. We are all here. We'll see. Okay? Yeah. Thank you very much, gentlemen, Dr. Ihetu and also Mr. Michael Osatuyi.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us on The Morning Show.